am your host for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. Finally, me and Roger Goodell have something in common, Marcus. We're both going to be doing NFL drafts at one point in our lives from our basements. Woohoo! I have an entire column coming out tomorrow on factoryofsadness.co around that entire joke. I'm your host for the Wrestling Underground, as always, Chad Porto, and joining me, as always, is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how are you?
I'm good. Should be a fun one tonight.
That's certainly words. I don't know. Like, we got a lot to talk about, but it's all just aggravating. There we go. Got to put that right. So let's start with this. Apparently, the WWE has confirmed Ryan Satin because they knew Ryan Satin would play ball and be the good little bitch boy that he is, and not ask any follow-up questions like, "Hey, maybe don't do things now." But the WWE has confirmed that someone did in fact test positive for the coronavirus. And listen to the spin, because, Marcus, it's really easy to actually believe the shit they say when there's no real, context or information to their words. They're saying that an on-screen non-wrestling personnel tested positive for the COVID-19 coronavirus, or as the boys at Wrestle Talk TV, the Steve Carino virus, because apparently if you say coronavirus on YouTube, you get demonetized. So, hey, all the love for Steve Carino. But so apparently, a non-wrestling on-screen talent tested positive, and they're like, well, he contracted, or whoever it is contracted it. They haven't released gender, name, or whatever. Whomever contracted it, the day after the tapings, when they met with several medical personnel friends, like nurses, doctors, whoever, over dinner. That's when she got it. That's impossible to know. But they're stating it pretty matter-of-factly. And if you think that's a reasonable thought line, like, oh, this person had dinner with friends who are like trainers or nurses or whoever the night after all the tapings, and that's when they contracted, and you believe that 100%, okay, there is, like, if we were taking this in a bubble, like taking it out of, away from everything else that is the WWE and just looking at it as it is, sure, that's a viable argument. On the flip side, the WWE is being sued by, or they're allegedly being looked into being sued by, or currently being sued by. Someone clarify that. They're either currently being sued by or about to be sued by shareholders who are upset with the WWE hiding the fact that the WWE proper invested money into the XFL when Vince McMahon said the WWE would not be investing any money into the XFL. Vince said categorically he is investing his own money as well as money from other investors, but not the WWE proper. Well, it turns out that was a lie, and Vince took $32 million from the WWE and invested in the XFL. Vince is a pathological liar. So if you actually sit here and believe, oh, no, so-and-so only got the coronavirus because they were having dinner with doctors. If you believe that, you're an idiot. If you think it's possible, that's fair. But if you know what you know about Vince McMahon lying about everything at all times for all the reasons, and you still believe that this person only got it because they had dinner with medical professionals the night after, conveniently enough, the tapings, then you're a fool. And I cannot help you. I'm smart and educated and well-trained in a lot of things, but even I cannot help you because you are lost. You are lost to the sands of time. Marcus, are you buying or selling? Oh, God, I'm ESPN now. Are you buying or selling that this individual only got sick after the tapings?
Like you said, it's weird. Who knows? All I know is, like, nobody's doing really following the guidelines here. Like, you're already in a situation where you're probably, because we don't know exactly just how to the letter they've been over there. probably maybe up to the line in terms of checking people's temperature and keeping a certain amount of people in the building at one time. But that's probably pushing it for a lot of people around the world. Then this said person goes out to dinner with people amid all this. We really not supposed to be doing that right now. So, it just seems like it's all a kerfuffle, if you will. But like you said, who knows? Doubtful. This may be a guy that's been through all these tapings. So who knows? Maybe he got it from somebody that hasn't even been, checked out and revealed to have it yet. And came up with him, and now he's the main guy. So, and that's the whack messed up part about it is a lot of people walking around who probably have it and don't know.
Yeah.
So it's bad. Again, it just points to a lot of irresponsibility that's kind of the way this whole thing has been handled, which we're going to get off into more because there's been another ruling with this whole thing dealing with WWE. So,
And that's a perfect sidestep into the segue, so let's go into that. Because, one, I don't think the WWE is being above board with all this. When you look at people like Vince McMahon and Dana White especially, there is a sleaze to them, and there's also a desire for money over doing what's necessary. The WWE does have contracts that they need to fulfill in a manner, or else they're going to lose money. Now, a respectable, refutable business would try to make a deal with their parent companies like NBC and Fox and go, hey, for the safety and well-being of my workers, I would like to have tape programming for the foreseeable future. Otherwise, we're going to have to just really both be in the shits right now because you need ratings, and I'm the only one still able to do live TV or TV essentially. But I need to do it in chunks, and I need to do it in a way that I can protect my talent. Vince doesn't care. He probably won't even be at the facility while they're taping, so, that's fun. And they're going back to live TV, which is going to put everyone in a serious problem. I've heard, now, you all need to understand something when it comes to the WWE. I'm not as abreast to the movements of certain talents and who's coming for Raw and SmackDown as they used to be because I no longer cover the WWE with any real sustainability. I don't care about them. So I don't know how much of this is real or not. So Mark is, fill in the blanks, connect the dots, fill in the puzzles, whatever. But Daniel Bryan, for the best of my knowledge, is not going to be attending to any of these shows, and I don't blame him. He's got 2 babies, one on the way. Well, 1 and 1. He's got 1 baby, 1 on the way. He's got a wife who's, I probably more at risk because your immune system just takes a shot when you're pregnant. I think she's still pregnant. So with that, I don't blame Brian at all. And knowing how fickle this company is, that could. I'm not saying it's going to, but if I found out tomorrow that the WWE's pissed that Brian's skipping shows to the point where they're going to fire him, I wouldn't fucking be surprised. Vince McMahon's a psychopath or sociopath. He's one. So you have all of this now, all these problems, if you're, I think about someone like AJ Styles. He's got like 5 kids, 4 kids. He better not be going home if he's going to work. Like, if he's going to stay in Orlando, only go from his hotel room to the facility for however long, okay, fine. Because he's still making money for his family. Him being on the road isn't anything new. I get that. But if he's going home after all these tapings, that's fucked. That's fucked. He's putting people at risk. Vince is putting people at risk. Like, this does not need to be a thing.
Yeah.
And the worst part is the governor of Florida, who up until 10 days ago didn't know that you could have the virus and not show symptoms. So, he's working with a full deck of cards. He's saying, no, we're not going to do a shelter-in-place order past X amount of days, and we're going to say that WWE is an essential business because they're vital to the Floridian economy. So I guess Disneyland can go and open up. But apparently their rationale is because WWE is a closed set for the moment, and they are vital to the Orlando economy, which how? They still have to pay their taxes. Oh, wait, I forgot. Florida doesn't have a state income tax. Never mind. Marcus, I'm flabbergasted as to how the WWE is a essential state economic resource in this time, considering they're not charging anyone tickets, they're not touring, they're not selling merchandise. How exactly are they providing revenue to Florida? Oh, wait. Linda McMahon just donated gobs of millions of dollars to a Republican super PAC for the upcoming 2020 election. That's how they're essential. This company is sleazy as shit, and I'm starting to get to the point in my life where unless you're someone that I can't do without in my life, if you start supporting certain people at this juncture, I'm going to naturally assume you're just a piece of shit. Fundamentally. And if you think this company, if you're a wrestler, and you go, hey, the WWE is not bad, I'm going to work for them, I'm going to start thinking you're a piece of shit. Because this whole thing has exploited and exposed so many people for what they truly are. It's exploited the workers and it's exposed the management. And I have a lot more respect for a lot of other people. Like Marcus, I'm about to say it. My governor's a Republican. I am a Democrat. If I found out tomorrow my Republican governor's running for president, I'd vote for his ass because he's kept Ohio safe. Literally. Like, man, I feel safe in my state.
It's one thing to talk about this whole thing in the microcosm of the WWE, which, let's be honest, is about as essential as a placenta post-birth.
Don't eat your placentas, people. That's gross. People do, and that's the worst part.
But even going outside of this, just really speaks to a lot of the problem of why we're still in this shit bucket. We've been in for however many months now because you have people legitimately, purposefully half-assing this whole situation. And just going around and like, oh, I haven't had a fever, I haven't coughed, I haven't had any of the symptoms. I'm fine. I go to work. I do this, that, and the third. The people around me, they haven't had any of that stuff. We're fine. I get it, but that level of stupidity is why we may very well be going off into damn near August with this thing, which has already been projected. And only making it worse, and the death toll is just continuing to go up by the day. So when you look at this whole thing, and like you said, I 100% agree with you that they have, and again, looking at this from Vince's perspective, I'm pretty sure he's going to look back on this whole thing once we, get past it. He's going to look at COVID as something that got in his way. Mm-hmm. This whole thing is just, the guys like him, Trump, all these other rich, white a-holes that think the world, the sun sets, rises and falls on their ass. This whole thing may be a pandemic to everybody else. It's an inconvenience to them.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a mere inconvenience to them and their cash flow, which is why, it's easy for him to be like, we're going back to live tapings. I mean, we, get off into the whole XFL thing. We get that they got contracts and certain things that they can and can't do. However that verbiage goes, but it's too many people you're putting at risk. And this is the line that gets drawn in the sand with a lot of these guys who we see toe this company's line to a fault on Twitter when it comes to far lesser degree of things. And they look stupid there. But now you got people, I mean, like, if there was ever a time for the roster to finally stand up and toe the line together and do the whole arm cross thing, like do the stupid thing they did in that crevice, that final shot of Crisis on Infinite Earth when those heroes just stupidly stood there while Oliver was putting in all the work. There was ever a time for them to do that, it's now, but instead you got guys like Reigns, who, of course, a 2-time cancer fighter will pull out, and other guys who, just have always come off smarter. But then there's other guys like, F it, I ain't got nobody depending on me. I could risk it. F it, when am I going to get another opportunity to get the belt? I don't give a damn if people are, in the arena or not. I'm never going to get this opportunity again. I got to run with it. And while that's understandable, it's extremely stupid and it's endangering people.
It is. And if it was one of those situations like I suggested 3 or 4 weeks ago, if they were like, listen, we need 40 guys who don't have any wives, girlfriends, husbands, boyfriends, kids, grandparents, whatever. We need 40 guys. We're going to fucking camp out in the goddamn performance center, and we're just going to run tapings. The 40 wrestlers and the 10 or 15 personnel. Like, that's it. We're going to run this. We're going to have food delivered to us. but we're not going to leave the building. If that's their mentality and that's what they were doing, I'd be all for it. Because listen, you're eliminating any chance of any potential exposure. You're keeping it in-house, and you're also still producing content without endangering anyone. But they're not doing that. So you got people coming and going, whether they're going to hotel rooms, Airbnbs, they're sleeping underneath their car. You know, it doesn't matter. They're still leaving and going and putting themselves at risk. And it's just getting to a point where I'm asking myself, to what end? Because here's the thing, Marcus, and I just know this out of just sheer mathematical probability. If you take a 6-barrel pistol, you put one bullet in, you spin it, and you start pulling the trigger, yeah, 5 times you're going to get an empty hollow click sound. 1 time your brain's going to be on the side of the wall. You keep playing with this gun, it's going to go off. You think there's only one positive case in the WWE right now? I don't.
One positive that we know of.
Right.
That we know of.
Exactly. I have a feeling that they leaked, well, not leaked, but since Ryan sat in that statement, full well knowing that there might be more, or know that there are more. But if we just cop to one, and they're not at the tapings, and they didn't, they weren't near anyone, then this is their culpable capability, and they can just say, well, no, we've already handled this, so if anyone else gets sick, it's not our fault. But it will be their fault. It will absolutely be their fault. I don't understand the need for people to try to pretend like this isn't happening. And for 90% of the people who get it, it is a terrible, 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 terrible version of the flu. But you'll get over it. But not everyone gets to have that experience. And a lot of people get that 10%. And if you get that 10%, you're going to be, irrevocably changed for the rest of your life. I read on a story on the internet. I was on Yahoo checking my mail, and I saw a 5-time marathon runner. I think it's like a 5-time Boston Marathon, New York Marathon runner. Got the coronavirus, had to be put on a ventilator. And because of the damage done, even though he recovered, his lungs are so damaged he can never run a marathon again. So even when you survive it, you're not surviving it, not at least in totality. You're still giving it a piece of your soul. So why the fuck are we playing this game? I don't get it.
They said it on several things. This is an ever evolving science that we're dealing with right now. Like it's like people try to rationalize. We as humans, we're stupid. Like it's funny because I was watching Man in Black, and then really that line that he gave, Thomas Will Smith was perfect. He was like, yeah.
No, go on. I don't want to take your thunder. It's a damn good line. I want you to have it.
I was going to paraphrase, but I know you, because you tend to be better at this stuff. But Will Smith was like, if y'all, these aliens been out here for God knows how long, and everything's just kind of going smooth, why don't you tell the public? Like, people will understand. Like, yeah, certain people will get it, but for the most part, humans are scary, panicky, stupid creatures. Dangerous individuals. And, the concept of a lot of people trying to put it in the context of a flu to make themselves feel better about it, because it truly is something we don't understand. It speaks to, a high level of ignorance. And then you look at a situation like this, and it's like somebody has had it, and they have, put them home and told them to shut the hell up, and we won't let it get out about you. You don't tell nobody else. You get over it. And, we'll kind of sweep this under the rug because this will be over in however many months, because that's how we want it to be. Meanwhile, when it first came out, there was this whole thing about it was just in China. And then there was this whole thing in my community that black and brown people, specifically black people, couldn't get it. And then that got dispelled. And then it was just old people that could get it. And then that's getting dispelled. All this stuff is getting dispelled. Like, I'm pretty sure you saw that young NBA player just lost his mom.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns lost his mom to complications of the coronavirus. And let me be very clear, because this is another narrative. A lot of people on a specific side of the line are saying, well, the coronavirus doesn't actually kill you. So saying that the coronavirus is causing all these deaths is actually, not true. Well, technically that does bear some weight, but not in the context in which they're saying the coronavirus does not have a symptom in it that will stop your heart or make your brain stop functioning. you die from the complications of the disease, not the disease itself. But those still count to the deaths of the virus. And unfortunately, one of the big, overwhelming issues with the coronavirus isn't the fact that it boils you from the inside out, because it does. 104 fevers are very common. And I, as a survivor of 105.9 when I was 4, I can tell you, anything after 101, you're playing with real dangerous fire. But the issue is that your lungs stop working. You know, I think it's like a fluid mixture and that builds up, and I think it's like stuff to do with like the inside of your linings of your lungs, you know, are unable to clear the airways. So you have all these things that it causes, and yes, that's what ends up causing the respiratory and organ failure. But it's not the virus itself that technically kills you, but it still is the reason why you got sick. It's still the reason why you died. So yes, when you hear someone died of the complications of the coronavirus, it still counts. It's like saying someone died of complications from diabetes or cancer. It still counts. If you didn't have that disease, you didn't have the complications. So it's one of those things where you need to realize that there's a lot of misinformation being pumped out there on purpose. Don't listen to it. The only person I trust any at all is this Dr. Fauci. Everyone seems to have a very high opinion on him, and he seems to be very level-headed with how he's handling and expressing his concerns. He's not doom and gloom, but he's like, listen, this is work. It's going to take work for us to get back. So we need to do the work. And as someone who was always told by his father, hey, if you wanted to get success, you need to do the work, so stop bitching and just do the work. I'm very much on board with the just do the damn work side of this philosophy. Stay home, shut the fuck up, don't be a dick. Stop taking all the goddamn toilet paper. You don't need that much. Jesus, Susan. Help the old people and stop prioritizing money. The economy will be fine. People won't.
Yeah, cause trust me, you think Anthony Towns wouldn't have gave every red cent he has made and will ever make to get to save his mom from what happened to her? Come on, man. Money can't solve when problems like this hit. Money ain't worth nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. You know, all it could do is maybe extend the inevitable, make things a little bit more comfortable, or make things a little bit smoother post the fact. But it like I said, it's an ever-evolving science, and there's a lot of willful ignorance going on right now with it. And this whole WWE thing, like, I was finna say somebody clearly got sucked off, but it might be in conjunction with whatever you said about with the whole Linda thing, because she came up trending today.
The super PAC that Linda contributed to was the metaphorical monetary sucking off.
Yeah.
So yes, someone did get sucked off, just with greens and not a hand or a mouth.
Yeah. So yeah, that's nuts, man. But again, I mean, I don't know how anybody else could call it. If anybody is legitimately defending the whole concept of and as much as we love this sport, this art form, calling it essential with everything that's going on, come on, man. Like, stop. You know, if you need this to be sitting at home right now, you like, now I can sit at home in peace because WWE is going to continue. You have far more problems than really can be sat down and talked about at the time. But you really have some serious issues. So
pro wrestling's been around for 120 years. There's enough content to watch. You can catch up now. Like, we don't need any new content for at least 13 years. We can be fine for 2 or 3 months. Now, some people are going to be like, well, clearly, this isn't just because the WWE donated money to a super PAC. It's, AEW can now run in Florida too. Well, yeah, because they legally can't tell AEW that they can't, because once they state that pro wrestling that films television shows are essential business to the Florida economy, then all wrestling promotions who have or will have taped in Florida for pro wrestling have to legally be allowed to. So just because there's now a caveat that allows AEW to get back into this window does not mean that this was not done specifically by the WWE to get, in fact, into the state to tape. And it's now also going to open up the door to UFC to come into Florida and tape as well, because they too are planning on holding events as soon as May 9th, I'm hearing, or May 8th. I forget which day it is. Whatever Saturday is closest to that May 9th date.
No,
There's going to be a UFC
well,
show, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in Orlando or Tampa or Miami.
well, that's interesting. Quick question about that, because
Hmm.
now that brings up a question for me. Just because now it's been allowed, do you think? And because AEW seems to be moving, even though they could have just obviously canceled. I mean, there's that TV gray area too with their contracts, but they seem to be trying to stay ahead of the thing about, okay, we just go put a whole bunch of stuff in a can and get in and get out, just in case the ultimate shutdown came. But it is a situation now where, because that particular thing has been open, that they have to get back to doing a live thing, because again, that's still a shaky thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that would come down to what TNT's contract deal with AEW is. Just from what I understand from Turner as a television company, they are probably, if not as bad, maybe more than NBC Universal in terms of their contractual demands. So I would imagine that there has been conversations with AEW and TNT. However, I would not be surprised if TNT told Cody and company, burn through what you have, because they've taped 3 or 4 or 5 weeks worth of stuff. Burn through what you have, and then come back to live TV. I would not be surprised, because right now, because all these are closed sets, there's no spoilers. So you literally
Yeah.
don't need to even. You could just tell Turner, yeah, this we'll air it live, and never tell them otherwise. Because how are they gonna know? You transmit the signal via satellites. How are they gonna? They're not there. They're not standing in the middle of the closed studio going, "Hey Cody, at the show, don't see a ring. What's up, buddy?" They're not doing that. So like, there's no real reason why it can't be taped. That's why I don't buy the taped to live argument. I don't think it holds any water, because there's no way you can spoil these shows. Ergo, there's no reason for them to be live. So I don't know. I think a lot of this has to do with money, and a lot of this has to do with egos, and a lot of this has to do with stupidity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a company that I do support, Impact Wrestling, is
Yeah.
falling in the same steps. They're going to be taping in a closed studio in Nashville, and they're going to have Rebellion be a 2-night Impact event across 2 weeks. Now, these aren't bad ideas in isolation. And I don't mean the isolation that we're referring to now. I mean, like, if you just go, hey, we had a canceled pay-per-view, we're going to air it 2 nights on TV instead. That's a great idea. But then you realize that they're going to be in Tennessee, and they're doing the same thing that WWE and AEW is doing by bringing in all these talents from outside the area. That means they're going to be staying at hotels, B&Bs, what have yous, potential exposure. All it's going to take is one prominent name in this community to get COVID-19, and there's going to be lawsuits out the ass from everyone and everywhere. Now, I hope Impact, who has shown to be, shockingly enough, outside of Ring of Honor, because they're just like, nope, we're not even gonna fuck with this. We're done. We're done until we're allowed to come back. Outside of Ring of Honor, Impact's kind of had the best clout right now in regards to their perception among fans. They're not pushing a lot of people, and historically, since the D'Amore Callis era started, they haven't pushed people to do things they're uncomfortable with. But this is still one of the situations where I don't like what they're doing. Eddie and Alicia Edwards just adopted a young girl.
Oh wow.
Eddie's going to be down there doing the triple threat main event with Elgin and Tessa. Elgin's got a little girl or a little boy, I think. So does Tessa. I believe his name is Daga. Daga Richards.
The fact that I had to think about that. Wait a minute, Doc.
Uh, I think Andrew Everett's knee is healthy, and I don't know what his relationship status is with Rosemary, but he's coming off of a major injury, so who knows what his immune system looks like. It's all one of these situations where there's just so many variables. It's not even worth the risk. Now,
Yeah.
it does look like they're not. We're not going to be out of this anytime soon. So I understand that, like, hey, we still want our guys to work. This is an opportunity for them to work. And if you can minimize exposure the best you can, that's great. But still, it's that idea of, you're putting people at risk for a television show. And I don't see the point.
Yeah, it's funny too, cause after getting caught up on Impact, I was like, can almost kind of excited to talk to you about Impact, cause I've thoroughly been enjoying these shows. Like this has been some of their best shows to me
Oh yeah, it's been really good.
uh, in
But
a
all this
while.
stuff
Like
was taped in February.
yeah, a while. But yeah, this has been some great content. Like it felt like I don't know if it was like one of those weeks, week before last, when it felt like they had like almost damn near gotten everybody on the show, but it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel stuffed.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody had something to do. Like if it was an offshoot stuff with OVE and certain tag teams, so like it's really seemed like they have a really great flow going right now with the product. And they really should be getting a lot of good credit for the quality that they're putting out. And maybe that's the sticking thing, like um, that they kind of just want to close out such good building to stuff. Even though, like you said, I mean, you got to just got to weigh things at this point. Like, what's more important? Because I'm reading this article right now with Magnus, not Jesus, Nick Aldis, um, for this magazine, and he's talking about stuff that they have. Like they had that Super Power show, and stuff that they put in the can, which was the lead in to their pay per view.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really make no sense to kind of put it out because that show may never happen.
Mm-hmm.
So they taping a lot of stuff, a lot of kind of docu type of content, sit downs, kind of like a lot of stuff that they did when or similar stuff that they did that great sit down between him and Marty Scurll in that empty arena. They got like stuff like that with like a mediator in the middle. So that's good for them. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of excited, but then I had to think about it when I read that whole thing with Impact because yeah, like you said, they got this, this sticky situations, man. Like they had a lot of people get injured on one of those pay-per-views. I don't know if everybody's back. You know, Swan is out, and stuff. So like WWE, you got to be mindful now. Like I said, it feels like they move smarter in a lot of ways, but this is still just a risk. Doing any of this stuff is a risk. But I feel like I wanna think that for them it's just closing out like a great set of tapings as opposed to um the doing the show for the F of it like other people clearly are doing. So
And the thing is, your hope might be more on point than most because, unlike AEW and WWE, Impact owns their TV channel. Same with Ring of Honor, which is why Ring of Honor and Impact could just say, we're not going to produce any content. What are they going to do? They own their own distributing services. So that's kind of where things kind of change for Impact. They don't have the same obligation to have to put on content. But on the flip side of things, you're right. They've been nailing everything. And unlike AEW and WWE, there isn't a need for them to go live. So they could come in, do 2 months worth of tapings across 2 days, and be good until June. So there's not as much exposure risk with Impact doing it as opposed to WWE or even AEW, depending on what happens with AEW long term. I heard that like the Jacksons weren't at the last set of tapings and somebody else weren't at the last set of tapings because of potential risks. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem with AEW. Like I would imagine that with all the shit Cody has gone through with the WWE and all the shit that he's found himself on now that he's the face of the company, he's not going to risk being that guy who goes, well, you have a right not to come, but I can't promise your spot's not going to be there. That doesn't seem like something Cody would say. So guys like Jake Roberts, who are in their 60s, Tully Blanchard, they're probably not going to be asked to come, and that's good. But I
yeah,
also don't think that they're going to be at risk of losing their spot. That's something that Jake Roberts has talked about. That he's worried that if he wasn't at the last set of tapings, that he wasn't going to be ever used again. I don't think that's something that would actually happen to him because he's got a great fan base for a dude who hasn't really
yeah,
been, excuse the terminology, but hasn't been relevant for the last 30 years.
no,
But he still has a great fan base.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that just speaks to I think, and God bless Diamond Dallas Page, man. That
That was
that
a
Easter
great
video,
video.
that was such a great that tear jerker, man. You're just such a great guy, and to see that little last part of it looked like both of them kind of got choked up there, man, and DDP is just, I mean, he's an angel, in this business,
Hmm.
for so many guys. Um, but yeah, I think that kind of just speaks to Jake's, the constant battle he has with his, sobriety. I mean, that's one of the things that he's, aside from, the dog battles that he's had, that's been the thing that he's been the best at, that he's been able to rely on in a lot of ways. And for him to, get on the other side of those demons and get back to it in the way that he has and getting the admiration currently that he's kind of always garnered in his past, I think it's just probably been such a great light and opportunity for him. So this, for him to be away from that now and in that particular bit of isolation, I imagine it got to be a little piece of hell for him.
Hmm.
But like I said, I'm glad he's got somebody like DDP in his life. And I mean, like you, I don't think he got nothing to worry about. He's been some of the best stuff to watch on the product. Just him talking alone, and
Always a
paying them.
great promo guy. Always.
Yeah, always a great promo guy. And he's always gonna have that. That's the great thing about been seeing it back. He hasn't lost a step in that regard. He can, pivot, verbally and go back and forth with the best of them on that mic. So I don't. He doesn't have anything to worry about. I think what's great, and maybe something he don't even realize, um, this in terms of his place and his level of talent, they really can just slot him back at a moment's notice. Specifically when it comes to somebody like Lance Archer, who really can just go from feud to feud because of how manic he is. He can literally be like a Bray Wyatt was, except he can finish the fights he starts. So, you know.
Yeah, he can actually wrestle.
Everybody dies. Uh,
Now, the video that Marks is talking about, so it was Easter Sunday, and DDP released a video. He had a baby in a harness, and I would like to think that's his grandbaby because DDP's pushing 70. He don't need no more kids.
bang! No more.
So I think it's his grandbaby and the grandbaby's mom, his daughter. Um, I'm saying they're the same person. She looks like she's 19, 17. So like I
Yeah.
don't know. She's young looking. But they're in their house for Easter, and Jake is back in the house, but he's in a 14-day self quarantine because he was out during the last few weeks taping with AEW. So he's in self isolation, and they left him an Easter basket, breakfast, and like something else on a chair outside of the room. And they had like a sign and Happy Easter, and Jake came out of his room and saw them, kind of like giving him a little Easter party. Even though they're keeping like 10 or 12 feet away from him, it was really sweet. And he got choked up because it's such a great show of love. And DDP's got his little fucking grandkid strapped to his chest, and it was
Yeah.
it's wrestlers helping wrestlers, and which is something that I just love seeing when it's done
It was.
authentically.
I mean, look, man, it was something so small, but so thoughtful, but that meant the world to Jake.
Mm-hmm.
That meant everything. Him to open that door, see that kid, see that meal, and just the dolphin is like he's literally he's continuing to save that man's life. So it really is just a beautiful thing, and that's what we need more of in this time. It's like what you said. Look out for people you can, specifically, the older guys, because guys like Jake always Rick. It's funny as much as we giving it Vince McMahon, he is in the category to be at risk. Yet he's the one that's giving it the hardest middle finger. Which I mean, classic Vince. But yeah, that was just great to see, and that's what we need more of right now. Not people pulling their thing out so they can piss in the wind while this is going on.
The saddest part, Marcus, is someone like a Dana White or Vince McMahon getting sick from this coronavirus would finally make them take this seriously. But unfortunately, both those guys I don't think are healthy enough to survive it. So that's the ultimate totality that we're talking about for people to finally realize what this is about. Like, stop testing this. It's going to win if you test it. It's like they say, death is undefeated, unless you're Vandal Savage.
Yeah.
And you're not. So it's undefeated. Speaking of wrestlers helping wrestlers, Ronda Rousey's done a great job helping everyone hate her. So, fantastic. And let's just cut right to the crux of the conversation, because there's obviously debate. This is a work. Okay, yeah, I understand the pessimism of wrestling fans, but oftentimes wrestling fans go, it's a work, and it's not. It's very rarely a work. And you want to know why I know it's not a work? Their entertainment's not this compelling, folks. Here's the litmus test. Do you find it enjoyable? Yes, it's not a work. Do you think it sucks and boring? Yeah, it's a work. Ronda Rousey, this is who Ronda Rousey is. I've been covering MMA for years. I've read all of her interviews. I've heard her talk about how she would slam on the walls of a hotel at night to keep her opposing trainer up just to fuck with him. I've heard her brag about beating up her boyfriend and inferring that she was the victim when she was the fucking bronze medalist black belt judokan of an Olympic level who's also, a good 185 of solid muscles. Yeah, I've heard her talk about how, people like Holly Holm are phony fake bitches, even though Holly Holm probably doesn't even know how to spell the word bitch, let alone has ever said it. Marcus, Holly Holm is literally a preacher's daughter. That ain't even a joke. She's literally the daughter of a preacher. And Ronda Rousey called her a fake bitch. So,
Did not preacher's kid, did not know that.
Yeah. So Ronda Rousey also has trashed every MMA personality, trainer. Her husband has been accused of sexual violence in a relationship with his ex-wife. So Ronda Rousey is not a good person. So the whole it's a work, no, Ronda has always believed this. She does think she's better than pro wrestlers because she thinks she's better than every female fighter that she's ever stepped in the cage with. She has an ego problem. To quote Dr. Cox, she has a giant ego. So this notion that it's a work is a fallacy. It's people clinging on that this isn't just petty-ass bitches being petty-ass bitches, but they're being petty-ass bitches. This isn't a work. It's not. It's 100% not. They might spin this into an angle, but Ronda Rousey's effectively said she's not coming back.
Yeah, man. We've talked about it. The whole Ronda of it all. To me, and maybe leaning more towards you, specifically that last bit, because they did this thing on Raw where before Baszler's match, she got approached by a backstage interviewer and asked about Ronda's comments, and gave no reply. So, yeah, that part. But to me, initially, it was kind of 70-30. 70% of it being her 100% ego and being insecure in a lot of ways, and 30% of it being like, hey, maybe this could work into something if, because she's apparently been spotted at the headquarters. Maybe, maybe not even a month ago or something like that, but recently. So they probably got something cooking, and we can tell by the way that they book this stuff that they just dying to get her back into the picture, or else they would have dropped the belt off Becky in the first place. So, but yeah, for people who, and it's funny because all the situation clearly, I guess what ended up happening was Nia Jax got a new bunch of fans because she dropped a tweet talking about whether or not she has to make Ronda look good. Whether she gets told to make Ronda look good, which is hilarious because all these people that shit on the fans for getting complained about in a legitimate way, for having a legit critique, but all of a sudden something like this comes up and somebody like Nia Jax is looked upon who's protecting the business and looking out for the women, and it's nuts. But the Ronda of it all, look, she's sensitive. Look what she almost was in the suicidal mind state when she lost that initial L she took. And, when it comes to her husband, like she said she wants to have kids. If she comes up pregnant, all this is scratched.
Yeah.
It's all done. It's all scratched. And she even talked about, like, she was like, I was having potentially suicidal thoughts, and then I looked up at my husband and I said, I have to be here to give him kids. And whether you view that as the right motivating factor to get out of that type of headspace or not, it is a reality. So, I very much think that's, the one goal that she has. But when it comes to this, reading that quote that she had, I mean, look, this is what you said. She knows, she views herself as a real fighter, and she views what they do as some physical ballet.
Don't say the F word, Marcus. Don't say it. We gotta worry about the wrestling community. Wrestling community.
Yeah. Oh, Well, thankfully, I had the voicemail feature taken off my my Cox phone thing, so Cornette can't leave me any messages. So
Well, thank God for that, because that might be a little racially motivated on that one.
yeah,
So the thing with Rousey, people need to understand is, she literally once said that she believes it is her duty to continue her DNA legacy. This is before she ever got married, Marcus. This is before she got married. This is like 2013, 2014. She said that she believes that it is her womanly duty. I'm not quoting her exactly, but it's her womanly duty to make sure that she has children at some point because she believes her genetics are that good. She's a woman who has openly bragged about the fact that her mother once, when Ronda was a child, Ronda broke her foot once. I think it was her heel. And instead of, being a kind, compassionate, caring parent and going, we should probably go get to the hospital, get you in a walking cast so that way you don't fuck your ankle up or your heel up even more, her mother made her run laps on her broken foot. This is the kind of woman this is. This notion that Ronda Rousey's playing a character, no, this is Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey does think pro wrestling is fake. Ronda Rousey does think pro wrestling is beneath her. Ronda Rousey took the contract because it paid a lot of money for a little bit of amounts of work. Ronda Rousey does hate the fans. This isn't new because Ronda Rousey hates everyone. Ronda Rousey hates the media. Ronda Rousey hates MMA. She hates pro wrestling. She hates it all because she thinks she's better than it. All Ronda Rousey wants to be is praised. It's why Ronda Rousey isn't in any more movies, because she's terrible in them. It's why Ronda Rousey isn't doing any more TV show spots, because people don't like her. She's unlikable. She's attractive, and she was good. Was in the ring, in an MMA cage. That's all she had going for her. She's still attractive, but she sucks in the ring. She's not a good wrestler, and now she's pissing off talent. And you know this is legit when you hear Alexa Bliss talk very, very, very non-committal in a tone against or for her. She played it like a politician. If this was a heel thing, if Rousey was playing a character, Alexa Bliss would have responded in kind. Instead, Bliss was like, I appreciated my time with her. I thought we had some good stuff. And if she decides to come back, we'll do some more stuff. She was very complimentary of Rousey. So this is clearly not a work. Ronda Rousey hates wrestling fans. She hates wrestling. She hates you. Stop saying that she doesn't. Stop saying it's a work. Just because the company can at one point in time spin this into a work does not mean it's starting out not a work. People are, y'all need to realize that the business isn't that creative 99% of the time. So, this is who Rousey is. Accept her, for it or hate her for it, but don't deny that this is her.
yeah. I mean, when you've taken, look at how sensitive these guys are. That's in WWE. That's actually, they know what they get paid to do. We know what they get paid to do. We, the whole how much the curtain has been pulled back, yada yada yada. We know all that. But look at how sensitive they are. And most of these guys at this point within the confines of reality, this company, they're overpaid as hell. A lot of these guys are. And look at how sensitive they are about stuff that they know is true. They just, So imagine somebody who probably, again, props herself up above this, but is participating in it because she has a mild amusement of it for the time that she does. And she was sensitive before. Imagine how she's going to take it. So when I say 70-30, it's because she probably, probably something got mentioned. And it got to be a weird dichotomy for this company because they want so bad for things to be or prompt their performers in the way that they view the business and their particular company style around somebody like Charlotte. But then they almost need somebody like Ronda because she represents such a staunch opposite to it that when she comes into their stale product, it's like a freaking adrenaline shot. And they don't know how to carry that over when she's not there, so they got to do what they can to get her back. And whatever comes along with her, whether it be this type of BS or anything else she says, they just take it. It's like the female Brock in a lot of ways. So, it's always funny, but then the most sucky part about it is somebody like Nia Jax comes off like a hero because she's standing up to her when people bitch and moan and complain about the exposing of the business, but she literally tweeted, "Hey, if I get told to make this person such and such look good, because God forbid I, break somebody else's nose, you know, yada yada yada." And now she's getting praised because she's standing up for the women. Ah, okay, all right.
That's the bitch of it all. Nia Jax is just as dangerous in the ring as Ronda Rousey, but she's going to get praised because she's taking the right moral stance. I swear to God, if Hitler was alive today and he's like, dude, Trump bad, people would cheer Hitler. Not because people agree with him, but because he's taking a stance people like. And that's the
But
problem.
wait, but wait, this whole thing isn't finished. We have to wait for OJ's tweet about it.
Yeah, well, that's when you know that you've reached peak exposures when O.J. Simpson's tweeting about it. And then explaining how he'd get away with killing someone.
Let me tell y'all about this Tiger King thing. Nope, nope, not hearing it. Nope.
Oh, God. So the long and skinny of it when it comes to Rousey is, this is who she is. She's a dangerous worker in the ring. She hates pro wrestling. She's probably not coming back. I don't care. And I think the funniest part about all this is, like, she didn't really do anything to help the company anyway. Ratings weren't up with her. So it's not like, it's not like the return on investment was really, all that much, had all that much value to it. So
It goes back to the conversation we had, like all the praise, and rightfully so. She deserves the praise where she came from to where she ended off at. But we kind of contextualize like the amount of praise that somebody like Trish and Lita get, as opposed to, just the era that they were in.
mm-hmm.
If they were in, with the level of girls that we see now, what would that be like? They stood out amongst a very specific pool of women, and they did some great stuff. But a lot of times, a lot of stuff gets kind of bloviated, if you will. And when it comes to talents like Ronda and talents like Brock, and to take away nothing from Brock because he truly is a freak of nature. But it really speaks to when they come in and they move the needle the way that they do. It just only highlights just how stale, and uninspired the product is.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't want to acknowledge it. They think the company's brilliant for making moves like Brock and Ronda, and I know as much as you like them, even Goldberg. But it's because they're starving themselves to death of creativity.
Yeah. It's that idea of we're going to not eat anything because we got like a big steak dinner coming up. So we're going to fast for 7 days, and then we're going to go to that steak dinner, and we're going to enjoy the hell out of it. That's essentially what they do with these superstar types with like Rousey and Goldberg and Lesnar. They don't give anyone anything. You plan for one big night, and then you wonder, why the hell am I malnourished? Well, geez, I don't fucking know. Maybe it's because you're not taking care of every meal and making sure that every meal counts. That's how they treat their talent. They don't treat their talent like every talent counts, and they only prioritize one or two guys. And I think the funniest thing about all of this is, the more I see WWE talent, the more I see that they're all just whiny little man babies or whiny little bitches. From Ronda Rousey to Seth Rollins, they all are bitches. And ironically enough, that kind of gives me more respect for someone like a Roman Reigns, who basically never says anything. I'm pretty sure that dude doesn't have an actual emotion in his body, or at least an expressive face. Like, that dude probably saw his daughter walk for the first time. Inside, he's cheering, but outside, he just looks like angry Roman Reigns face. Probably happy as hell. Angry Roman Reigns. First time she says daddy, most of us would be bawling. He's bawling inside, but he's got angry Roman Reigns face. Happy about it. He's not showing it, though. So like when someone says you suck, he's probably like, whatever. Who are you?
You just wait till everybody leaves, goes off into a room, and go, oh, just no reason.
Do you think when his daughter was born, he was like, coochie, coochie, wah? But this whole thing has made me respect guys like Roman Reigns who don't take pot shot at fans, and who's like, yeah, they have every right to boo me.
Yeah, I mean, even Styles, and this is just something I was reading, like, cause it's funny because somebody was talking about his match I think it was the guys at Wrestling Soup, and one of the guys was like, it was like, now that AJ Styles is a part of the Grave community. Oh, the damn Grave community. But yeah, he was talking about his match, and he was like, look, man, for every person that and I'm gonna use this as a segue. For every person that liked his match, there's gonna be 2 or 3 people that didn't like it, and he fully 100% understands it. And you were very vocal on our last show about how you felt about that match. But it's funny because you get to somebody like Edge, and I get it with everything that he's gone through to get back. But his match was, as we talked about, it was long, it was plotting, it was basically boring. But he was recently on the Corey Graves After the Bell podcast, and you think Edge is one of these guys who's kind of above this type of stuff, but now it feels like he's kind of lumped in there with guys like Rollins and just all these other guys, the Braves, the Corbins, who just really can't take any form of criticism. Because, and I quote, he said, everyone is entitled to their opinion. It's wrestling, right? It's art, it's subjective, whatever. Whatever blows your hair back. Randy and I have broad shoulders, and we can weather the weight of a minuscule militia of malcontents who still just want to complain about everything.
If Edge sneezes too hard, he's going to snap his neck in two. I don't know what his shoulders have anything to do with it. The fulcrum of the weight is always on the lower neck and upper shoulders. You don't have the ability to weather the storm physically there, Adam. Secondly, when did people stop thinking that Edge wasn't a piece of shit human being? I'm serious, because we're going to segue into another segue, but we're gonna tackle this first. Edge has always been a bad dude. People just like him. You don't cheat on your wife with your best friend's girl if you're a good guy. You don't do that. Edge has long been considered to be an asshole by a lot of people. But we forget or choose not to remember because we want to like the guy. And this, we go back to want to like yitis. Like, here we are again, another guy that we want to like. I don't like Edge. I've never liked Edge. But this is a dude who literally got his entire rise to fame because he dicked over his best friend. On purpose. For funsies. And you think Edge doesn't have a superiority complex? You don't think Edge isn't someone who has some serious issues with people criticizing him? I'm going to be gobsmacked if I find out he's never cheated on his current wife. Because once a cheater, always a cheater. Like that's just how it is. Because people who cheat don't realize that there's an underlying reason why they cheat internally. I'm not saying you got to be in a bad relationship. If you're in a bad relationship and things are bad, end it. I'm done. I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I don't love you. This is a chore. I feel like I'm not being appreciated. I need to go. Or even, I met someone. We haven't done anything, but I'm developing feelings for her, and it's not fair to either one of you for me to continue going down this road. I'm out. Doesn't have the balls to do that. So you think that he's going to be fine being criticized? What? Come on. Edge is a douche, and he's always been a douche. He gets nice boy credits because he's friends with Christian, who, generally speaking, has been married for 20 years, doesn't have a blemish to his name. So if you hang out with a fucking saint all the time, they're gonna think you're at least somewhat saintly.
It doesn't get nearly the praise or the level of fanfare that he should for his career, even post his stuff with Impact. Mm-hmm. So.
Also, before you go on, I do want to point out, and it's also kind of like that perception. Edge is a bit of a dick, kind of an asshole. But when you have Vince McMahon and Triple H and Randy Orton all in your company and have all been accused of some pretty heinous shit throughout their legacies, it kind of makes Edge seem like a fucking Boy Scout. But he's still a douchebag, and here he is proving once again that he's a douchebag. But anyway, go on. What were you going to say about Edge and Christian?
Yeah, because I've never really been a big Edge guy. I think I liked him more when he before he ventured off into his rated R stages. But I've always been more of a Christian guy, and hopefully he can kind of get some type of into the sunset type of deal, whether it be with the Hall of Fame or maybe a potential comeback. I don't know what his health is looking like either, because they basically retired him off television.
He actually just commented on this.
Oh wow.
like either today or yesterday. He was talking to Booker T, and he said something to the effect like, now that Edge is back, does this open up the door for you? And he kind of hemmed and hawed, a lot of pauses, a lot of breaks, but he essentially said, we don't have the same injuries, and I don't know how I can come back from mine. Because like Edge had like a specific surgery done that alleviated the pain and helped strengthen the
Yeah.
weaknesses in his neck. But Christian retired due to concussion issues.
Mm.
And while he
Okay.
didn't state that officially, what he said was
Yeah.
like, I can't, there is no, there's no surgery for what happened with me. Then he goes on to say later on, I had so many, concussions, I don't know if I could ever come back. So it sounds like he said, basically retired due to post-traumatic concussion disorder, or
Yeah.
it's the syndrome that you get when you've had a concussion or two too many, and even though your brain has healed, the symptoms aren't alleviating, and when that happens, you end up essentially having to retire because a minor concussion could cause permanent brain damage. NHL Hall of Famer or soon to be Hall of Famer Chris Pronger had to retire because of that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I had no idea about that, and I've been wondering about that for a long time. Because he really just kind of just again kind of just moved off of TV, and then that was the end of that. I think we got a one-off line about it from I think the King about him being retired. Like when we found out that your girl Alicia Fox was in the legend section or something.
I love her. I love her to death. Like have my mixed race babies, please. But also,
Yeah.
how the fuck are you a legend, honey?
Like, she was supposed to come back on the freaking. I don't know if that was one of them like them historic Raws where she was supposed to come back, but I'm like, how the hell did you just get moved off of TV? Look, the best thing about the silver lining and all this is that she's getting healthy,
Mm-hmm.
continuing that above anything else. But it's just funny how like people like her and Christian have literally just been moved to freak off stage or get yanked like those old talent shows with the hook.
with the little, hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Yank.
And somebody give me the Riddler stick. Give me that. Yeah, yank.
You see me run on stage and just clobber him over the head with it. No, you're supposed to pull him by the handle. Oh, my bad.
My bad. That's on me. That's I sure did it. That's yeah, but that was one definitely. I'm glad you tackled that side of it. But with this whole thing about this quote, it's like how can you just called it subjective, and then you criticize the people who subjectively criticize the match. No, that not everybody was gonna love it. It was a last man standing. Uh, really feels like a big ass audible that they had to do. And besides the fact that it was, pretty much boring as hell, like the two of you basically had a moan off for some damn near 30 some odd minutes, and then the last five of it made it feel like it mattered. But even aside from that, people are complaining about the alleged Benoit spot, which people really to me wouldn't even be bringing up if that Dark Side of the Ring hadn't just come out. Um,
Very possible.
but
Very possible.
yeah, but I just feel, I mean, it's like how sensitive are these guys? You can't call it subjective and then getting your feelings about like we get it. You came back. This shouldn't be happening, but it's happening for you. And I'm pretty sure you went through hell to get ready for that, and y'all had to do audible, and you gave what y'all could, but what y'all gave was not satisfactory for some people, and that's fine. But to call them minuscule militia malcontents, come on, man.
Obviously not minuscule enough that you could just let it, gloss by. I think part of the problem is, and this is something that doesn't just happen with Edge, but I've noticed a lot, especially with guys who return to the WWE, unless you're in a good place, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and that doesn't necessarily mean religiously. I mean, like, as long as you are content with who you are, whether it's good or bad, you're fine with. Like, you look at someone like Sting, whose entire career was literally ended by the Nazi fucker Seth Rollins, has still never said a bad word about it. He's like, I'm fucking 102. I've had more pile drivers than a goddamn construction site. I'm surprised my neck lasted as long. He's been very gracious and magnanimous, and that's because someone like Sting is in a good place financially, physically, spiritually. So like he's fine with things going the way they are. He's accepted that. But there are other guys that that just all like the Revival. They have a huge issue with the company right now. Luke Harper. These are guys that signed for years. Like Luke Harper's there for like what, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. He signed in like 2011, didn't he? So you think about this. You think about how long some of these guys were with that company, or you think about guys who return to the company, and then they leave, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they know that it was a disappointment. And I think Edge expected to come out, Tampa Bay, 80,000 people saying, "You think you know me," or singing along to Metalingus and all that. And when he didn't get that, that hurt. And then he's like, "Well, I'm still gonna go out and put on the match that I was gonna do with the 80,000 people, but now I'm gonna do it in front of Slappy Jack and Sarah Joe over here who are holding the boom mic." All right, cool. But it was 45 minutes with 24 of it being a tightrope contest on top of a truck. What do you mean you didn't like it? Oh, I did all that for you. No, you didn't. You did it for yourself. Let's be honest here, guys. So it's kind of one of those things where I bet you Edge is dealing with a lot of career disappointment right now. And you see it a lot, outside of things, like when a director makes a bad movie. Very rarely can they just say, hey, I know, don't fucked up. Like Ryan Reynolds. He's like, dude, Green Lantern, real bad. I'm sorry. But then you think of like The Rock, who what was that movie he got shat on for? Was it that skyscraper movie?
Scorpion King Walking Tall. Was it
no,
the
more recent.
Witch Mountain?
No, it was more recent, like 2018, 2019.
It wasn't a Rampage movie, was it?
I think it might have been, actually. I think it might have been. And Rock was like, the movie was great. I don't know what you guys are talking about. It was real good. I had a lot of fun. It's like, dude, it was a bad movie. Or people didn't like it. I've never seen it.
I think that might have been Baywatch.
Oh, yeah. It was Baywatch. That's what it was. It was Baywatch. Good. Marcus with the save. Like a hockey goalie. Fucking glove side. He's Julie the Cat Gaffney. You can't score on his glove side, bitches.
Yo, perfect. I was so glad. I thought, like, oh, this is going to be the lobster chest.
So, yeah, when Baywatch came out, it was fucking destroyed by people. And he's like, y'all didn't get it. It was this. And he's like, yeah, obviously Rock's disappointed. It was a financial failure. It was a critical failure. It hurt his bottom line, I'm sure. Because I'm sure I think I read somewhere like he bought the rights to the Baywatch, IP or something like that. So like, yeah, it was in all ways a failure. Some guys can roll off the back, like a Ryan Reynolds, rolled off the back. Some guys put all their heart and soul into something, and when it fails, it hurts, and you can't move on so easily. Doesn't necessarily mean you're bad, dude. I don't think The Rock's a bad guy. But, hard for to get past. And I think Edge realized that his match sucked. I think it was a culmination of all the things he didn't want to have happened. And instead of having this great moment where he can be like, I'm back, I'm here, this is all grand, great, and beautiful, all of a sudden it's like, this is depressing, it's disappointing, I'm angry, I'm mad, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't what I was promised, and now I'm lashing out because I can't take responsibility for the fact that I made poor life choices. So that's essentially what I think this is. And, to Edge, I would say you have bigger problems to worry about. But here's the thing about wrestling fans. They'll shit on you over the littlest of things. But they'll never come after you for the biggest of things. Because wrestling fans are fickle little fucks. Because Marcus, we're segueing. Do you remember Amy Weber? If you say no, I'm not going to be mad. Because who does?
Vaguely.
JBL had his cabinet. Remember where they, the Basham's JBL and the token black guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the name. Yeah.
I believe his name was Token Black Guy. If you look at the U.S. title reign, it'll be like, like Booker T, Chris Benoit, like Rene Dupree, and then like Token Black Guy. He's also known as Orlando Jordan. But she was like the secretary of secretaries or some nonsense like that, or the chief of staff or something. No, Jordan was the chief of staff, I think. But she was like the female, valet of JBL's cabinet in 2004 and 2005. She had like an on-screen feud with Joy Giovanni, which is again who I know. Trivia question, right? Well, apparently Amy Weber went on to say that the reason why she ended up leaving the WWE was because at an overseas tour, they came back and she had gotten hurt overseas. So she asked for some ibuprofen. The trainer told him it was in a bag in the men's locker room. Go get some. So she got some ibuprofen and some ice. Got on the plane. It's like a chartered plane, so it's just WWE wrestlers, so there's a lot of open seats. So she laid down across her row. Not some big faux pas. She didn't kick anyone out of the chairs. There was no one else in them. So she laid down across the three chairs, and I've done this before myself. When you have an entire row to yourself, you fucking use it because why the hell not? They're there. No one else is using them. Might as well. And apparently, Randy Orton came up behind the chair and hit it so hard that she fell out of it because she was laying down. And then Edge allegedly poured some type of drink on her. And now Amy's talking about this, and a lot of people are like, that doesn't sound like Edge. Yeah, it does. it's exactly how it sounds. And people are like trying to defend it and trying to say, well, unwritten code, blah, blah. And wrestling fans are just the worst because so many people are defending Randy Orton right now, and it's like, why? He's admitted in a magazine article interview to sexually assaulting fellow wrestlers for fun. He gets no passes anymore. Randy Orton's a scumbag. And, and people are saying because she didn't see Edge pour the drink on her. Someone poured the drink on her. She looked up and Edge was holding the cup. She's like, well, that doesn't mean Edge did it. Listen, if I shot JFK in the head and the gun's still in my hand and no one actually saw me pull the trigger, but the gun's smoking, it's in my hand, and I'm pointing it at JFK, you can surmise I did it. That's a reasonable leap. Now, if I'm sitting there with a goddamn, what was that thing from Legends? Weeboo? Beeboo? Bobo?
About Bebo?
Yeah, if I'm sitting there with a goddamn Bebo in my hands going, who's a good Bebo? And everyone's looking at me, he shot JFK, I'm going to be like, the fuck you get to that leap from? I don't see no hopscotch here. You can't leap to that conclusion. So it does sound like that she was bullied. And everybody's like, well, that doesn't sound like it. Well, first and foremost, in 2005, that's exactly how it sounds like because in 2005, these were all the stories. Every story coming out of the locker room was that JBL was abusing people. Batista and Molina were hooking up behind John Morrison's back. Well, John Nitro at the time. You had people constantly talking about, Rene Dupree talked about how Bully Ray purposely gave him concussions to teach him a lesson. This was the atmosphere back then. Of course this happened. Of course this is believable. I don't doubt this story for a second, considering how much of a disaster the backstage mentality was in WWE. This is going to sound cold as fuck, but the greatest thing that happened in this company was Chris Benoit going off and doing what Benoit did because it forced people to look at what was happening in this company, and it forced the company to have to stand up and start taking responsibility for the behavior of their talent. Nowadays, you can't get away with most of this shit because HR is a real thing now. Before, it was just what they called Triple H as a joke. Now this is real. Like, you can't do this shit anymore because of social media. Fucking Leo Rush, who has somehow pissed off all of wrestling, somehow, in some way, still had supporters when he called out the WWE. So you can't do this shit in 2020, but in 2005, you damn well could and did. And a lot of people are like, well, if they're overseas, the doctor would have had this. So let's just clear up some things in 2005. They didn't have a doctor on the road with them. They had a physician. They had a trainer, a sports trainer. They didn't have a doctor. The sports trainer often didn't have any supplies because most guys were still doing large amounts of fucking volume. They were doing fucking sleeping pills, painkillers. Drug use in 2005 was off the goddamn rails. There wasn't any... Everyone was taking somas. Everyone was taking somas. So why the fuck would the physician need ibuprofen when everyone else has horse tranquilizers?
You can't debate nothing you're saying right now. If you watch that first part or the second part of Dark Side of the documentary, the text exchange between Benoit and his wife she's telling him you need to get off that shit, and they literally going back and forth talking about how much of a joke the testing system is or was. Look at Benoit. You think he wasn't on something? Come on, man.
I've never seen a human being have traps the size of most people's heads. That's a new one. Traps are trapezoids, for those of you who don't know, and they are a shoulder muscle. But I think Kevin Nash once said that he was taking 20 somas a night just to sleep. Like, y'all need to realize and wake the fuck up. In 2005, the WWE was a goddamn 1980s rock show. Cocaine, somas, painkillers, horse tranquilizers. They had everything. But the on-site physician who's supposed to wrap your knee after you have a boo-boo is supposed to be the one to hand out drugs when when it's the locker room who's got all the best stuff. That's like a cop walking down with a billy club, going up to like the Crips. The Crips have got like fucking 50 caliber machine guns. Cop's got a billy club. What do you want him to do? He's clearly outmatched. He's going to defer to the gang.
And think about how all across all spectrums, how far technology has advanced across all spectrums since 2005.
Mhm.
And then knowing what we know now about traumatic head injury, CTE, all that stuff. And for a lot of these guys, obviously they were taking it to aid in their physical well-being, because a lot of these guys either had old school mentality about whatever's going on with me, the show I'm a part of must go on. Then you had the other side of the fence where guys were taking a lot of this extremely self-harming shit as a recreational tool,
Mhm.
just for fun. Like, we hear about this, some of the effery Orton got into. He was probably taking a lot of this stuff for fun.
Probably still is.
So
I'm not
it's
going to
like,
give that a break.
I mean, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of these guys probably have figured out some kind of way to get around a lot of this stuff, and then guys like Orton, who is in a unique position now to kind of set his own pace because of I guess he got seniority now. But yeah, a lot of these guys do a lot of this foul stuff for just because they use the recreation, they get off to it. But going back to what you was talking about, to kick it off with the fans, they're the length of the mental gymnastics that they do, so the reality of a person, so they won't allow the reality of a person to match up with their perception of who they are, is insane.
Olympic levels, impressive. Like, truly impressive, the Olympic levels of gymnastics that these individuals can pull off mentally. I think part of the problem, and this is a societal issue, Marcus, I don't believe people have, by and large, have the depth of you and my credibility and authenticity. I think a lot of people are very afraid to be, judged. I think a lot of people don't have a lot of decency. So when they see someone like a Randy Orton or an Edge getting accused of this stuff, instead of going, "Yeah, that sounds right," they go, "No, it didn't happen," because subconsciously, I believe that when you see someone like an Edge or a Randy Orton and you're big fans of them and you deny what they did, I think retroactively you think that it reflects who you are, and it does. It absolutely does. I've talked about this before. I was in denial after the Benoit stuff. Not that they died. I fully believe that, but for a good 3 weeks I tried to find every conspiracy theory possible about how it wasn't Chris Benoit, because Chris Benoit used to be like one of my 3 favorite wrestlers of all time. Period. He was right. He and Sting were right there, in my opinion, in terms of who I preferred watching. This was a hard blow for me to accept, and it took me a long time to come to a rationale that, yeah, he did it. He did it, and I can't change it, and it ruins my entire life experience enjoying this man's work. But it happened, and I need to accept that. And a lot of people don't want to accept that. And like another version of this, we talked about this before. Jeff Hardy used to have that hype package in 2008 called Rooftops by the band Lost Prophets. Used to be one of my like that album that came out in like 2005, I think. One of my all-time banger albums at the time. Like, I listened to that shit on loop. It was fantastic. I loved every song on that album. It was like one of my 5 fucking favorite albums of all time. Lead singer ends up being a legitimate, by textbook definition, child pedophile. And I'm like, nope, can't listen to this anymore. It's ruined. And I think a lot of people can't accept when that reality of these bad people are doing these bad things, and it can taint your whole experience. Instead of going, yeah, that sucks, it ruined my experience and I don't need to move on, they reject it because these moments or these people have too much control over their actual existence. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, and just to catapult off, those great points that you talked about. I think to kick it off, with me and you, regardless of how we felt about these people, whether we've loved them from the minute we saw them, ever have you, from what they've done, or we've hated them from the onset, and they've only proven us right as years gone on. we've always, me and you, and obviously other people have always maintained a healthy relationship both with wrestling and with the guys in it. For a
Hmm.
lot of these people who we're talking about, they've never had a healthy attachment to these people.
Yeah, that's
In
fair.
a lot of ways, the reason I think the depths goes, and getting back to those, talk about those extreme hot depths of Olympic gymnastics. For a lot of these people, they view their self-worth through how they perceive these individuals. So the concept of them not actually knowing them in real life never really, computes for them, because what they see it to them is reality. So whatever they seeing, with social media, through what they do in the ring or their characters, they take those characters like, look, man, I don't have any of these traits. I want these traits for myself. I can't exude this. I can't be this charismatic. I can't have that body, but this guy can. So I can somehow, make myself vicariously uh, feel worth something through them. And anything that speaks to the contrary of that, I can't compute, because that's going to put me back into the doldrums. Because if this thing that I've held up so long crumbles, then what do I have left? And I know that's real deep, but I think that's what it is for a lot of these people. That's why they dedicate whole social media pages and get tattoos of them, and come up to them at a sign and ask them to sign they freaking babies in the face. Like, what are you doing? Like, none of this stuff is that serious. So it's like, I just think it speaks to this deep uh, longing for something that a lot of these people are trying to reach, that they really have to look internally to get. But again, say this a million times, it's easier to look out of a window than it is to look in a mirror. So,
That's pretty fucking accurate.
for a lot of people. So I just think that's what it is. And when you see situations like this, and that's why I always bring up that geek voice, because you bring up all that stuff from Orton and like, Chad, where's the proof? Nah, I don't see anything. I didn't read that interview. He didn't say that. Nah. She doesn't know what she's talking about, even though I wasn't there and she was. She doesn't know who spilled that on her. Nah. Like that all that stuff is. But that's what it is. That's their Orton, and you can't tell me anything about my Orton. That's how they view it.
I've said this saying before, and I don't even remember where I first got it from. It's not an original, but it speaks very true volumes about people. The reason why, like with the Anzo and Mori situation from like 2 years ago, Marcus and I took it very matter of fact, about face, because we had one person saying it happened, one person saying it didn't happen, and there was a lot of evidence that to the contrary of it happening. But we still never made a definitive stance on where we stood with it. And that's because Enzo has never been in that situation before. We don't know this woman. We don't know anything. But when it comes to Randy Orton, there's stories from everyone. Most of them are from Orton himself. So the idea that we can draw a parallel for Randy Orton being a bad dude, it's not a leap. I don't need to source all this proof. He said it himself. He's been suspended for destroying private property. He's been reprimanded for calling Kelly Kelly a whore on an interview, on a radio airwave. He's bragged about, genitalia brushing against people's backs. So, like, these stories about him, pulling his junk out in front of people, how are you going to deny that? Yeah, I don't have any video evidence. I don't have any photographic evidence. Pretty sure it ain't that big to find anyway. But when you realize that, like, this shit is part of a personality, and the personality has long been a drug abuser, an abuser of physical people, emotionally abusive, psychologically abusive. How are you going to deny that it's possible? I don't get it. I don't understand that desire to put your head so far in the goddamn sand that you end up going to another continent. Like, we all know it's happening. We all know he's gotten away with it. You want to pretend it didn't happen. That's your prerogative, but don't sit here and tell me it didn't happen, because it did. Now, when it comes to this situation specifically, I believe it, even though I wasn't there, and even though I'm taking her word over theirs, because, one, Randy Orton has a history. Pretty checkered history. Edge has a pretty checkered history. Both of them were probably doing shit in 2005 they shouldn't have been doing. Edge was doing his best friend's girlfriend in 2005, so I 100% believe that he would, in fact, torment some 20-something-year-old girl that he has a good foot and 180 pounds on. Well, maybe not 180, like 120, but still.
It's funny because in the Orton's, to give him part, if you're gonna give him any credit here, he always readily admits that he has been, can be, and a lot of times continues to be an a-hole. I don't know what people hear when he says that. That's a very broad spectrum when you say that. So what do people? I wonder what goes through people's mind when he says I can be an a-hole. Like what do you think he's just like dicking around, like, pulling somebody's chair out, like that's your level in your mind. That's what he's talking about. Like that type of dicking around. Like when one says dicking around, that means something completely different. You
Yeah,
know,
he's
so
being very literal with that. He does dick his
yeah,
dick around.
you got to remember that quote, man. When people show or tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah,
Believe them.
yeah. I kind of forgot to mention what I was going to say, but there's that old adage: if one person calls you an asshole, that person's probably an asshole. If two people call you an asshole, those people are probably assholes. If three people call you an asshole, you're probably the asshole. And enough people have called Randy Orton an asshole. It's time people start realizing that. Like, Randy Orton's not a good person. He's never been a good person. All this he's changed nonsense is bullshit. He literally walked around with his junk out in offices to intimidate and silence people into conformity through sexual harassment and maybe even sexual assault. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. He's crossed one line. What's to say he wouldn't cross another? And people are like, oh, it didn't happen. And then the very next day, WWE says we're investigating it. And then Randy Orton walks out and shakes everyone's hand because he finds it funny. He's a psychopath. And y'all don't think he did anything to fucking Amy Weber? Are you kidding me? What? No. Fuck off. You're fucking stupid if you actually think Amy Weber's lying. And let's just play devil's advocate. Let's say Amy Weber's not lying. Or let's just say she is lying. Let's just say she is lying. That doesn't change who Randy Orton is. Just because this one story may not be true doesn't mean all the other times weren't, because Orton copped to them or was suspended or was fined for them. So he's not changed. He's still a piece of shit. And I'm glad that Amy Weber's dragging him because Randy Orton's a bad dude. One of these days, someone's going to finally sue him. One of these days, the company's going to have to deal with Randy Orton's entire past. The days of Jimmy Snuka not going to prison because he murdered his girlfriend in a hotel room and Vince was able to cover it up, those days are gone. All it's going to take is someone to stand up and go, yeah, Randy Orton sexually harassed me and I'm done. I want my goddamn pound of flesh. And people are going to be goddamn more than justified for going after that company because the things that they've done, the child sex crimes, that happened under Vince McMahon's watch, the Randy Orton shit, the Benoit shit, the steroids, the drug overdoses, Owen Hart's death. All that shit's going to come eventually to a head. And I want to point one thing out. Apparently, the Owen Hart stuff is getting a lot more traction last week. And David Bixapen, I love this dude. He tweeted out a comment saying, like, I think the one thing that always gets lost in the Owen Hart stuff is that, well, somebody else said it. That gets lost in the Owen Hart stuff is that a homicide essentially occurred on the premise, and not only did they not stop the show, there was no investigation. Fair point. Bixapen goes, yeah, the ring was a crime scene. And I went, no, it actually wasn't. The crime didn't happen in the ring. It happened in the rafters. The rafters was the crime scene. Where Owen landed was just the unfortunate situation that played out. I don't like David Bixapen. I think he thinks he's smarter than he is, and he says dumb shit all the time to try to get people to notice him. He has no credibility in my world. Absolutely none. But the guy he what's that?
Just add him to the list.
Oh, yeah, he's number 2 on the list. He's been on that list. Him and Sean Ross Sapp have always been on that list. But the point that was really made that like Owen's death should have been treated as a crime scene and that they should have investigated it instead of continuing the show. 100% agreed. Like, think about that. Owen Hart died in a tragic accident, and the show didn't stop, nor was it investigated immediately. Like, you would have thought someone would have called 911, like, dude, we need to shut this shit down. But it just goes to show you who Vince McMahon is. He doesn't prioritize life.
I mean, look, I mean, and it's nothing funny about the scenario, but again, going back to the Dark Side of the Ring thing, because it is a really great series, as tragic as a lot of stuff is. Look what happened with the Benoit thing. They essentially, I mean, obviously they couldn't have known. Details had to further come out, but it does go to that thing. Nobody would have believed what happened, but they prematurely jumped the gun, did an entire 3 hour tribute show before the nightmare that became the eventual permanent 3 hour Raws, and then turned around with well, not a week later or the next night or whatever, and
Next
was
night.
like, so what we thought happened didn't happen, and yeah, Ixnay on the Benoit's egg, you know what I'm saying? So, and it's blasphemy to even say Ben anything now in the company. So, you know,
I bet you like Randy Orton's favorite movie is Ben Hur, and he can't even bring it up anymore. Ben
yeah. And knowing just the stuff that I do about Vince, obviously we don't know him from a pack of Mentos, but knowing just what we've seen and heard and read, and like I said, obviously seen with our own eyes, because now I'm thinking about all the stuff you're saying, and just going back to that interview where he damn near punched that guy in that sit down interview, because
Yeah, Bob
went off.
Costas.
Like Vince in that scenario, that this man might have actually been more pissed off, not about. I mean, I would imagine there's some remorse there because a lot of these guys are like assume fan of him, but he probably might have been more pissed off in the scenario as opposed to the murder suicide. He may have been more pissed off at how stupid that tribute show made him look before he got all the facts.
Yeah, I don't remember when the Bob Costas interview came out. Was that 2004?
I don't know.
Because it was about wrestlers' deaths, but it wasn't. Benoit hadn't happened yet when that interview happened. I want to say it was like 2002, 2004. But as far as the looking stupid thing and the whole Benoit situation, I read somewhere that the police knew at 4 p.m. on Monday that this was a murder investigation. That this was a double murder suicide. That just shows me that the WWE was not keeping in contact with the local PDs. Because if you're Vince McMahon and you don't know what happened, you just know 3 people are dead, I would want to know how. I'd want to know why. Especially if I'm about to go do a tribute show for a man who's gone. I would have called the police and been like, hey, Vince McMahon, sup? Yeah, that Vince McMahon. How you doing? Employee of mine died. Want to do a tribute show. Have you ruled out any foul play for the Benoit investigation? Oh, double murder suicide. Definitely wasn't the kid who did it? Probably means that the dad did it then. Oh, he did do it. At least that's how it looks. Probably shouldn't do the tribute show tonight. I'm glad I did my due diligence and called. You have a wonderful night, click. That phone call never happened. My dramatic impersonation or interpretation of how that moment could have gone never happened. Vince never called. The WWE never got ahead of the situation. So I think it's one of those things where you think about the Benoit situation, and it just makes Vince look stupid because he easily could have avoided the whole situation, but he didn't because he didn't want to know the truth. That's Vince McMahon in a nutshell. He doesn't want to know the truth. So it is what it is. I wish we had more positives to talk about tonight. Every piece of news sucked. My soul's a little bit more darker than it was when I started this thing. Marcus, is there anything else that has piqued your interest that you want to comment on before we call it a night? I'm going to hop over to wrestling and see if there's anything we missed.
Yeah, I mean that. Man, like you said, that's a particular note to end on, man. But I think it was, we had some thorough talk throughs tonight about a lot of this stuff, and it's hardly, aside from getting some quality stuff here and there with some of the shows that we are getting, it's still kind of cringeworthy just because we know the level of danger that it presents. But it was good hearing about, those couple of adoptions and whatnot, because I didn't know about, hell, I didn't even know about Andrew ever dating Rosemary. Lucky bastard. I am, however, trying to figure out what bar that is that Rosemary is obviously looking for multiple races of suitors, because last week she approached somebody in the black community. I got excited.
Marcus doesn't mind having his soul drained a little bit.
It doesn't seem like she's trying to return to the undead realm anytime soon. Looking a little empty down there here now that that line was the last. Who booked this shit? That was hilarious.
MLW and Ring of Honor have declared they won't run shows in Florida despite government clearance. So, MLW and Ring of Honor continuing to be the upstanding citizens that they were. Apparently, Darby Allin punched Cody Rhodes. When was this?
Jesus Christ! Can
never
nobody
mind.
keep hands up? Oh,
It was
that was on the show.
Yeah, it was on the show. I didn't know that. I don't watch Dynamite, so.
I feel like if they don't do an eventual storyline where this guy just freaking snaps and damn near goes back to being a Stardust for everybody that's betrayed him, like I feel like the only person that might not betray him by the time it gets through is Brandy. That's because she has a legitimate vested interest.
Well, I don't know. Steph and Triple H betrayed each other more than one time, so.
Oh God,
They're basically just
freaking
Triple H and Steph at this point.
real life storyline ends up happening. She ends up with Guevara. Oh God.
Or even
Rose
better.
and Guevara.
Even better. A real life storyline happens where Guevara legitimately impregnates Brandy Rhodes.
Oh my God.
Oh.
All Cody is left with is Pharaoh.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure that's the only one he cares about. Like, he highlights his dog more than he highlights anyone else in his family. I'm just saying. So let's leave it on this story because this is actually kind of a cool one. Will Ospreay's a really likable dude. He's a likable dude, but he can't cut a promo for shit. But he's a good dude. You know, he's the inverse of like an Aaron Rex. I'll listen to Aaron Rex talk all day. Just don't make me watch his matches. Will Ospreay wants that CM Punk goodness though. And he's been saying like he's going and going and going and going on, you know, bringing CM Punk back. Now this goes back to like a year or two ago, where somebody asked Punk in an interview like if you did come back, who are some of the names you'd want to wrestle? And Punk did the you know like the John Cena's. I think he said like Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, and like somebody else. And he's like and Will Ospreay. Well, like I think Seth Rollins was another one. It's like you know Seth Rollins, John Cena, and Bryan Danielson, all WWE guys. Daniel Bryan, sorry. All WWE guys. But Will Ospreay is a New Japan guy. So now Will Ospreay's got it in his head. I brought Amazing Red out of retirement for a New Japan show. I can bring CM Punk out of retirement for a New Japan show. And now Will Ospreay is going all in on trying to convince CM Punk to come back to wrestling in New Japan. And now he's saying that he's going to call CM Punk's bluff and try to get Punk back into the ring because Punk once name-dropped Ospreay as a guy he'd like to wrestle once. And this was already after his retirement, so or Punk's alleged retirement. So, Marcus, do you think Will Ospreay and CM Punk could ever actually happen? And if it did happen, would you want to see it?
Yeah, I'd check it out. I mean, I'd be far more apt to check that out than another potential stint with him in UFC. And anything's possible. I mean, he's not beholden to the WWE. I don't feel like right now, or however that contract is. I feel like he just wouldn't want to go through that nightmare again. But I mean, yeah, anything's possible. You know, I feel like we will be seeing a lot of people make some type of transition now that freaking Revival had finally been freed, if you will. But yeah, I mean, look, if he look, I didn't think he'd really do the UFC thing, and he did it a couple times. So whatever he's feeling froggy for, I think he'll jump at. And Osprey is a guy who, you know, hopefully has a lot more years in him, and I don't think he's trying to leave New Japan because I think he knows what's awaiting him over here potentially. So, yeah, I mean, I dig it. I think Punk could probably get in far better shape and perform better at that than, like I said, the UFC thing. So, I think that'll be cool. And if Punk really wanted to come back in a big way with Wells to do it in a Wrestle Kingdom, I think it'll definitely set the wrestling world on fire. I mean, you know, we saw what it did for Kenta. I was going to call him Hideo, but that seems like blasphemy at this point. So we saw what it did for him. So I think it could be something great for Punk. I mean, obviously we know it wouldn't be no long stint because that travel, and specifically after all this go down, I don't even know what level of normalcy we go eventually get back to. But he could do the Jericho thing and do some good stuff. So.
Who had his little breakdown last year, late in the year? Not Cedric Alexander.
Oh, we freaking ACH.
ACH. Are we about to ACH Kenta now by referring to Hideo Kojima or whatever his name was as his slave name?
It's oh god. I hope that kid's doing okay, man, because we haven't really heard anything from him. Which hopefully he kind of took our advice and kind of quarantined himself before all this kicked off and kind of got himself a little wrestling retreat because you gotta take a step back now and then. So, but
I,
yeah, that
I,
slave man.
I hope he's okay. I truly do hope ACH is okay.
Yeah.
So, lastly, because this has been talked about before, I think it's Kairi Sane is allegedly thinking about bailing on the WWE. Are you at all surprised by this?
Are you serious? She came in with a pie gimmick. Sell yo ass right on back to Japan or wherever is not WWE and get out of there. I mean, she just got squashed pretty much to Nia Jax. That tells you about all you need to know about where her spot is and where any potential momentum she had can go or not. So you know, she don't nobody want to waste years of what she's potentially doing now. You know, Asuka, I don't know how she's looking at stuff. Maybe she's like Nakamura and have settled into being stateside. But somebody like Kyrie saying, I would imagine, kind of got an itch for high levels of competition, and it ain't Nia Jax, and the damn sure ain't squashing the Nia Jax. So, not surprised at all.
Well, kind of the rumblings I'm hearing is because now that Stardom is owned by Bushido Road, the parent company of New Japan, there's a belief among many that they are going to invest significant funds into Stardom in order to strengthen the Japanese wrestling scene against any WWE involvement, because we saw what happened when WWE came into the UK. It killed the scene. Long before the coronavirus ever came, the WWE killed the British wrestling scene. I know a lot of people in the scene are like, we have more promotions popping up than ever before. Yeah, that means that they're folding twice as fast. Because if there's no entryway into the market, then that means that everyone in the market is healthy and strong and viable. It's when you have easy access into the market, that's when there's not a lot of market there to monetize. Because they keep having options and opens and avenues into it. Marcus, you and I are not going to be able to start a streaming service with the available revenue streams and entertainment options available to us. I don't think people want to pay $9.99 for a service where they get, in living color and, brotherly love. Like, they're not shelling out money for that. And that's when you need to realize, like, the streams are profitable, but they're oversaturated. It's when you can get into it. That's when there's a lot of volatility. The British UK scene, the UK wrestling scene is not in a healthy state, and that's partly and mostly because the W came in and killed it. They bought out promotions. They signed all the top exclusive talent. Fan bases started to dwindle. At a certain point in time, Progress was like the shit. Now no one's talking about it. Why? Because all the top Progress talent is in NXT now.
Yeah, I mean it's so difficult with everything, with the new levels of creativity people have had to feel like they've been unique in any way because there's so many markets open now. But again, like you said, they're oversaturated. Like everybody and their mom has a streaming service now. A lot of people are switching up from going to platforms to creating their own on stuff like YouTube and other things of that nature. So it's very hard to carve out a lane and keep it, just a one car deal. It ends up opening 6 lanes within, weeks, if not months, just because of where everything's going. And because people are now being forced into new levels of creativity because of this quarantine, a lot of those lanes may get closed anyway because people are just finding it financially and more conducive to do stuff from home um, now. So, who knows how this is going to go once everything is up. But when it comes to wrestling, yeah, I mean, look, we saw, I think this time specifically would have been such a great time for Lucha Underground to still be around.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Carved out a real unique niche for themselves, but things happened and we don't have that anymore. But they, like I said, they called out a real unique piece of the pie for themselves, but that's not the same for other places. A lot of other places, all they can do is kind of stand out is have somebody like a up and coming AJ Styles in the 2000s, or a Kyrie Sane or others. But get companies like WWE who just want to hoard talent for the F of it, and other companies are kind of just left in the dust, and all they can do is keep it alive badly, either on the YouTube channel or they're just cave entirely, which we've talked about, unfortunately, recently. So, for as much as it seems like it's thriving, it's suffering at the same time.
The thing that is really kind of interesting about all this is I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to how Japan really does, how they're going to handle the WWE kind of arrival. Because some people are reporting that NXT Japan's already signing people, but there's no base of operations yet that I'm aware of. And there's no real belief that they're going to be successful because Japan's a very, I don't want to say racist country because that may not be fully accurate, but they are a very private country. They're not just an island country. I think people forget this. They're an island country surrounded by not just water, but mountains. There's not a lot of ports into Japan. They've always been very insular. I think Tokyo and one of the western prefectures on the south side are like the only two major ports. So they're not, very fond of foreign involvement in their business. So I can't imagine they're going to be kosher with WWE moving in. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I remember what happened with the UK scene, and they're hoarding all these talents, and WWE just lost $32 million on the XFL. And, God knows, they probably lost about 40 to 50 million on failed contracts for WrestleMania. So they're going to have to start letting people go. They're going to have a really bad fucking year financially. And eventually at a certain point, stockholders are going to be going, why are we paying 500 talents money when we only need 150? So, NXT is not a moneymaker. NXT UK is not a moneymaker. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these international plans are permanently scrapped after this is all said and done. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting thing. Marcus, my dear friend, is there anything else that you want to comment on before we say goodnight?
Nope, I think we covered it. I love it. This was a packed show. Good stuff.
Yeah, we even got one positive story. Thank you, Will Osprey. Marcus and I will be back on Thursday at twitch.tv/Comic and GameCorp at 9 p.m. We are reading, I think we have 11 issues left of the boys, 10 issues left of the boys. We're reading the next arc, which I believe is 5 issues. So we're reading that for Thursday. I'm going to talk about, I watched the Resident Evil CGI movies that have come out over the years. Not the live action ones. Those are terrible. I'm going to talk about that. And Marcus, actually, I think you would enjoy the most recent one. I think it was Resident Evil Revenge.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about that.
So, all right. I'm just going to say this. At a certain point, you start thinking, he's going to show up on his motorcycle. And you're always right. And I'm not going to tell you in context. I want you to experience that joy. But Marcus, I swear to God, I've never seen a fight scene or fight scenes as well done as these were, and these were CGI fight scenes. Holy shit, just computer polygons doing shit. And it's so fluid, and the animations are beautiful. It's so good. I don't know how you feel about zombies and the spooky-ooky of it all, but if you're kosher with the Resident Evil franchise, you'll love this movie. It only got a 43 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm calling blasphemy, because Marcus, I was audibly going, oh shit, oh that's so cool, oh my God. And then with a motorcycle of it all, I'm like, of course. So it's one of those things that, if you're okay with the zombie of it all, I think you'd enjoy it because it's actually a really good film. It's, in my opinion, the best of the Resident Evil films, be it live action or computer animated. So definitely check that out. And I'll talk about it some more on Thursday. So if you want to join me in that conversation, we can. So we'll talk about that. I think I'm finally going to watch Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, did you see that thing I sent you?
I did, and I've never been more horrified in my life. That dude was way too invested in that movie.
Oh my God, that was hilarious.
Like, that was fucking horrifying. Just this big fucking Braun Strowman looking white dude screaming. I'm like, is he metal? Is he singing metal lyrics? And they're like, no, he's reviewing Star Wars.
He had a Braun Strowman physique with like Bane-esque vibes with Hogan vernacular undertones.
It was like if Hogan was a demon from hell, and instead of going, "What you gonna do, brother?" said, "What you gonna do, brother?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I guess this is the thing now. So yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff on Thursday. Tomorrow, Zach and I are back for Making an Impact. We'll catch up on more details about Impact's upcoming tapings, what they're going to do with the Rebellion events, the dates for the Rebellion event, or we might preview the Rebellion event depending on when it's set to air. So we'll talk about all that as well as this past week's episode of Impact tomorrow night at twitch.tv/Wrestling Underground at 9 p.m. So tune in for that if you want. You can find us on Twitter at NERDCORP. We're also on Instagram at REALNERDCORP. That's NerdCorp on Twitter and Real Nerdcorp on Instagram. Our website is realnerdcorp.com, REALNERDCORP.com. We need a WCW for tomorrow, Marcus, and I am tapped for ideas. Do you have any suggestions?
Holy hell! And I was thinking about this earlier today. I did have a suggestion. Gonna get back to you after the show.
Works for me. Marcus can be found on Twitter if you like his brand of personal views. You can follow him and find more on his Twitter account at ParadoxKid, PARADOXKID.
That's me.
He also does another podcast called The True Penny Show at True Penny Show on Twitter at TRUEPENNYSHOW. If you want more Marcus, follow him on that as well. Actually, follow them. He's part of them, but he doesn't run it. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHADNERDCORP, as well as on Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut, CHADS PHOTOHUT. That's CHADS PHOTOHUT. So be sure to follow me on there as well. We'll be back next Tuesday for another edition of the Wrestling Underground at 10 p.m. on twitch.tv/Wrestling Underground. So for Mark Screen, I'm Chad Porto. Stay the fuck inside. No one gives a shit if you think wrestling and MMA should be holding events outside of Florida, because they shouldn't. You're wrong. And as always, watch more wrestling. Marcus, take us home.
Stay quarantined, me.